So this is the KhoodeelaarTV television channel, broadcasting under the banner of Baby Angel Geronimo editions. This is part A, timed at 10:00 hours GMT on Monday, the 29th of April 2024. By the time this edition is broadcast, the Scottish National Party minority kind of government may collapse with the resignation of Hamza Yusuf. Why am I talking about Hamza Yusuf and the Scottish National Party or Scottish Nationalist Party? Because in the context of the racist political apparatus in place across Europe, especially in the United Kingdom, of which Scotland remains a part and is doomed to remain a part for longer than could have been expected 10 years ago. The presence at the front of a regime or any regime or a sub-regime of individuals of the kind of ethnic backgrounds typical of the people in the demographies as represented by Hamza Yusuf is mentioned totally wrongly in my view and on the evidence as representing landmarks. Thinking about Hamza Yusuf, I was reminded this morning of the status as a poster girl by the racists in control of the Labour Party in the 1980s of Diane Abbott as the poster girl most frequently publicized as wearing the t-shirt, black sections, Labour Party black sections. And although there were 4 of the black section nominees that got elected in 1987, it was 10 years before Tony Blair fronted the actual landslide electoral kind of victory in 1997. But Diane Abbott was never put on the front bench, and she never got anywhere near getting into the governments fronted by Blair 3 times and the racist Gordon Brown at the 4th time before he was ousted in 2010. So what did Diane Abbott actually represent? Being the poster girl, and then remaining now, she remains the only one of the 4 that got elected in 1987. Paul Boateng, as a complete absolute crook, got a spot in South Africa, the Blair regime's ambassador to South Africa. And then the 2 of them, he and his wife Janet, discredited the whole office. And then Paul Boateng faded out of the House of Parliament. House of Commons. And before that, Barney Grant had died, of course, of a heart attack. And Boateng was followed by Sleaze Vaz, many years later, of course, because Sleazebaz was the one who persisted in the kind of news headlines in a kind of default way, being chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee. But the Sleazebaz, the personality of Sleazebaz, was made of sleaze, layers and layers and layers of sleaze. I mean, the amount of sleaze that Sleazebaz is made of has exceeded the sleaze combined by the other three. Diana Abbott hasn't got as much sleaze about her, but she is a friend of Sleazebaz and has never criticized anything, any aspect of his corrupt career, his sleazy time. So Diana Abbott is the only one who remains of the so-called black sections nominees elected in 1987. But when she was elected from Hackney, Stoke Newington and Hackney North, she was actually foisted by the so-called left to replace Arnie Roberts. And I found that corrupt at the time, and I still do, that Arnie Roberts was replaced to make a place for Diana Abbott, which is corrupt. So as I've said in the main narrative about Diana Abbott, she is herself dishonest, and she is a product of the racists on the left, and the fact that she has got a black child is the only association she has personally in her personal life with the black community in that sense, because her main profile is associated forever with Michael Portillo, a racist and a right-wing fascist. So the fact that she was the poster girl used by the racists in the Labour Party in the 1980s, who created the apartheid black sections, meant and has meant that it was nothing more than a token, opportunistic token. It wasn't about the black demography, the black population of African and Asian descent or descents being defended within the Labour Party and in the Labour Party's manifesto programs. The Labour Party remains as racist, as imperialistic, as corruptly imperialistic, and as corruptly racist in 2024 as it was in the 1940s before the mysterious departure of the British imperialists in the 1940s, in August 1947. So what are the actual lessons politically of ethnicity in the West? In Britain, for example, the Welsh regime, the Labour Party fronted regime, is represented by the black son of a white mother. Why do I say that? Because it is the white mother who has been featuring in the protocols after the election of the black son, mixed race son, who has been mentioned as the first black leader of a government in Europe. Fuck them. He is not. The Welsh government is a joke. It has never been a serious contender, let's say in comparison with the government based in London. And whatever the ethnicity background of the fronter of the regime in Wales, politically, there has been no representation against racism, against imperialism. For example, if Kemi bad enough ever became the leader of the Conservatives in England, Kemi bad enough would be the black woman from African Nigerian background. But she is as right-wing, as fascistic as Italy's current fascist prime minister. Kemi Badenoch told Jenny Starner of the Times magazine in the stupid profile that they ran about her next conservative leader that when she used the NHS, her mother, Badenoch's mother, derided Badenoch as going for the cheap version of health care or health service. Where do you begin to condemn the combination of idiocy, backwardness, anti-society attitude that is represented there? So, and then there is the whole list of conservatives in the last 14 years, conservative members of parliament in the United Kingdom who are black of origins, African origins, or of Asian origins. But the Asian origins, like the Nusrat Ghani episode, is distinguished by the brazen anti-Muslim hatred shown to Nusrat Ghani. The conservatives don't hesitate before openly undermining, before openly condemning and insulting, racistly insulting Muslims, as Nusrat Ghani found out when she was told that she wasn't getting ahead in terms of a career in the conservative regime. She was told directly, point blank, to her face, that because she was a Muslim, regardless of the fact that the reference to Muslim and Islam in the actual personal lifestyle and personal behavior of somebody like Nusrat Ghani is a tenuous one. It's a very, very shallow one. None of the Muslims in the Labour Party in the House of Commons in Britain, or in the Conservative Party, of course, none of the Muslims is on the evidence justifiably identifiable or describable as a Muslim adhering to the whole set of duties and obligations and abiding by the principles entailed by being a Muslim according to the Islamic faith, no matter what particular sect of Islam, Sunnah or Shia, is observed. And in the case of the media, the most ridiculous Muslim participant on the mainstream, Muslim woman, Yasmin Alibai C, is most ridiculous because she has nothing but contempt for all the main Islamic traditions, political, social, ethical, and moral. Now, before I go to China and take a look at what Elon Musk is doing in China, a child of apartheid being feted in China, I mean, the question is, what difference does it make of ethnicity, faith, whatever? It doesn't. Because China is fiercely controlled by the Communist Party. But what communism is there in Elon Musk's adventures? Because in the last week, he has been to Fate Modi, the fascist mass murderer of Muslims, Narendra Modi. He has been fighting him right at the time when Modi is celebrating really a revived Hindutva fascistic electoral stunt for the third time. And there is no sign in the Western media anywhere of the factual reporting on what goes on across the huge land of India, which has got more than 1 billion people. There is no coverage. It's only cover-ups. The Western media covers up what goes on in India politically, socially, and in terms of religion. The genocidist agenda against Muslims has been developed in a crafty way by the Hindutva regime, as opposed to, let's say, Netanyahu's Zionist brazen genocidist assaults on Gaza and the rest of Palestine. And back to the issues surrounding Hamza Yusuf in Scotland. Hamza Yusuf yesterday was in the news as having rejected Alex Salmond's offer to cooperate in salvaging his minority regime. But Hamza Yusuf has rejected Alex Salmond. And I think there would be massive evidence to reject anything that Alex Salmond actually promotes. Salmond is discredited because of his personnel lack of integrity and morality and honesty and consistency and ethics. I mean, 10 years ago, the SNP were riding, in terms of opinion, in terms of the profile in the main media, as about to become the leaders or bringers of independence to Scotland after 300 years. Whatever happened to all of that? Everything has been completely discredited and exposed as shallow. That doesn't mean that the Labour Party, under the political murderer of the Labour Party, Keir Starmer, is about to become the main majority force in the Scottish Parliament and therefore become the next Scottish government. It isn't. It doesn't. So in Scotland, there is not one single party that is actually representing maximum number of voluntarily given consent of the voters. And the fact that the Greens have brought a crisis to Hamza Yusuf's regime shows the Greens' own stupidity, adding to the idiocies of Hamza Yusuf's lot at the Scottish Parliament. Angela Rayner's denunciation on Wednesday of Rishi Sunak as the pint-sized man again highlights the racism of the Labour Party front bench. But then, what is there politically, socially, ethically, morally in the personality, political personality, and the political career of Rishi Sunak to defend on the basis of opposing racism? I only mention this because the comments by Angela Rayner affects other people much more than it affects Rishi Sunak. Sunak is on the record as having said that he doesn't have working class friends. He never had. Well, he didn't say that because he was regretting that. He was boasting. And he has made sure, of course, for the rest of his life, I suppose, that he will not have any working class friends. By manipulating himself into a marriage with the daughter of the founder of the Infosys, the Indian tech billionaire who, like Elon Musk, has no problem in doing business in China. So the difference between the Chinese regime and the Indian regime, whatever the political color in India, is a shallow difference. Because India is pursuing in a very crafty way the policies that China is pursuing in its own way in the regions. India and China are rivals apparently, but they're rivals in name. They're doing it opportunistically. And India's relations with Netanyahu, who congratulated Narendra Modi not long after the Burmese anti-Muslim massacres took place. So Narendra Modi and Israel are very much following the same course, and Modi has persistently refused to vote for a ceasefire when the vote came on the ballot in the United Nations, because Modi is confident that the Arab regimes that India does business with don't have the moral courage to confront the Indian fascistic anti-Muslim policies. In other words, what I'm saying is that the ethnicity and the religion and the faith and whatever in politics in Europe as well as in the rest of the continents of Africa and Asia is or are overstated. What actually is driving each one of the political decisions is opportunism on the one hand, on the part of the perpetrators locally, and indifference on the part of the rest of the so-called world. Every part of the world is dominated by decision makers who are not moral, who are not observing morality or ethics whatsoever. And it could extrapolate, apply across the rest of the world. Examples, say, from Bangladesh. I mean, what is happening in Bangladesh politically? Politically, ethically, morally, it's a complete void. Most of Pakistani politics is equally very much in the void. What happened in 1947? What happened in the nearly 80 years since 1947 now in the subcontinent has happened disregarding the various pledges and commitments made to the people by the Muslim leaders and the Hindu leaders. So ordinary people, the phrase that Camilla Long used in the Sunday Times yesterday, and talking about Harvey Weinstein, and she used the ordinary people to denounce the founders of the Me Too movement that came up after Harvey Weinstein was identified as the harasser, as the rapist. The ordinary people really have no say anywhere. And Hamza Yusuf is no exception. He doesn't represent ordinary people. He represents a careerism, as does the Welsh version of the first black leader of a Welsh Western country. Fuck the commentators who are absolute morons. They don't check facts, and they don't care about checking facts, because the ordinary people who are the consumers or the targets don't really care as much about the facts as they should do for their own good. This is going back to the piece that, or the two pieces that Private Eye fortnightly ran about Tower Hamlets Council. In the Rotten Borough's page, the first one was the lap of dishonor, and the second one was towers of crooks or corruption. I haven't got the item in front of me, so I'll check that particular heading in due course and update the reference accordingly. But the essential information that the Rotten Borough or Rotten Borough's page in Private Eye focused on was the corruption under the re-entered careerist crook Luthraman in the post of the mayor. Can you believe this? Tony Blair foisted the corrupt post of mayor in English politics. Elected mayor, that is, executive mayor, as opposed to the de facto mayor in terms in terms of the office as a speaker. I mean, did Tony Blair even think, when he was, whoever was actually influencing him, that somebody like Luthraman in Tower Hamlets would get to be the post holder instead of the Labour Party member, so-called, forming the main government in the local council? I don't think so, because Blair couldn't care less about Tower Hamlets. He demolished the council housing stock, the concept of the public ownership of the housing stock in Tower Hamlets was demolished by Tony Blair. And Tony Blair carried out the demolition by the use of the surrogate John Prescott, the moron, the thug. The thug was the fronter of the DEFRA, the DEFRA that has persisted in being corrupt and evil, as we know from the targeting of the baby angel Geronimo. But in the early days of DEFRA, that was renamed during Tony Blair's time, John Prescott, one of the things that Prescott did was to attack whatever remnants of democracy and local say was available to the Labour controlled Tower Hamlets Council at the time, and he forced Tower Hamlets Council, and I'll come to the use of the term forced, to give away thousands of council-owned properties, housing stock, to a gang of crooks, thugs called Haque. The criminals that control and have controlled Haque are criminals that are very much culturally of the same demeanor, outlook as the criminals that were in control of the other one, the smaller one, called THCH, Tower Hamlets Community Housing, which was fronted by the crook, Michael Tyrrell. The terrible Tyrrell was feted by the Labour Party crooks who had the post of Speaker in the House in the Tower Hamlets Council in 2013. They feted Michael Terrible Tyrrell in order to respond to my criticism of him and the Tower Hamlets Community Housing in my very brief question put in June 2013 to the so-called full council. It was and it remains and it has been a council of fools. Fools council. It's not full council, it's fools council. And the speaker, the Labour Party councillor who was the speaker, interrupted me by suspending the session under the excuse that a man was taking pictures of the proceedings. The pictures were allowed legally because Eric the Pickles, as community secretary at the time, had not long ago introduced regulations allowing members of the public to film and record proceedings of council sittings, meetings. But this racist interrupted me and thus enabled Lutfur Rahman's regime, because although the Labour Party held the speaker's post, the actual council control was still with Lutfur Rahman. That was 2013. And the holder of the token post of housing, member of the Lutfur Rahman fronted cabinet, was of course Rabina Khan, who is a proven liar and a proven moron who was lying in her own way. But her lying was enabled to get worse by the behavior of the speaker belonging to the so-called opposition, Labour Party at the time, suspending the sitting for a few minutes. So what I have covered in here is going backwards. Rabina Khan, Lutfur Rahman, Paul Botang, Diana Abbott, Keith Sleaze Vaz, and Hamza Yusuf, amongst others. We shall be continuing to update on this. Before I'm finishing this one, I'm going to refer again to Lutfur Rahman and the brazen negligence, brazen failure, the brazen decision to blank, to deny the existence of these four girls, Shamima Begum and the other three. Because the council, Tower Hamlets Council, has for the last 15 years been aware of the brainwashing by the Western imperialists, spying operatives of these girls, these children. And it has not safeguarded them from the brainwashing. It has not protected these children under the obligations that the Council has been obliged to carry out, called the safeguarding the children duties. So this continues to this day, and this has not been different, despite the fact that from 23rd of April 2015 until he returned 6 years later in 2022, Luthuroman was not in post as mayor of Tower Hamlets Council. It was somebody else, mostly John Biggs. But the difference between Biggs and Luthuroman makes no difference to the actual negligence and corruption by the council to the ordinary people. Does Camilla Long even have the slightest idea what all of that means in Tower Hamlets to ordinary people in Tower Hamlets? She doesn't. And there is no evidence that Private Lie either bothers about the ordinary people. Private Lie only mentioned the corruption by the 5 councillors belonging to the wrongly named Aspire outfit fronted by Luthuroman. 5 councillors currently sitting who are reported to have been condemned by a court judge in response to or in ruling on an application by a man called Santosh Nair. Santosh Nair made a planning application, licensing application, and the 5 councillors so far identified or mentioned demanded bribe, and they said to Nair, he's a Hindu man, Indian origin man, Santosh Nair, that if he paid them bribes, his application for the license renewal would be granted. And Luthuroman has been reported in the second of the 2 pieces in Private Lie, second of the 2 editions, let's say the second edition, because the first one was Lap of Dishonor, and the second one was headed Towers of Crook or Corruption. The title I will check and update on in due course. And Luthuroman was made aware by Nair and other people of the corruption and the bribery demand. And according to Private Lie, Luthuroman persisted in denying knowledge of that and denying any remedy to Santosh Nair or anybody else. Another one person, another Raman, who complained, I think, according to the eye. So, whatever the actual ethnicity, whatever the faith, it is a bogus difference. Hamza Yusuf is not politically, ethically, morally, really remarkably different from Anas Sarwar. Anas Sarwar, the son of the first Sarwar, the Labour Party MP, was driven out of office by the persistent racism inside the Labour Party in Scotland as well as in the rest of the Scottish politics. Anas Sarwar and Hamza Yusuf and the Welsh counterpart, who is the son of a white mother and a black father. There is no moral content at all. As There is absolutely no moral content in Kemi the lying bad enough. And despite the fact that she has belatedly been given support by the likes of Angela Rayner and Jess Phillips in the Labour Party, Diana Abbott remains significantly politically irrelevant. Diana Abbott remains politically significantly irrelevant to the plight of the people in the ordinary population, in the ordinary demography, coming from the African origin, Caribbean origin background, Empire, Windrush included, and people from the subcontinent of Asia and other parts of the world. So we're ending this one at just over 41 minutes long at 11:43 GM UK time BST, which is 10 GMT, 10:43 GMT on Monday the 29th of April 2024.